It's 7:03 and I call the City Council meeting to order for June 16th, 2014. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm Ann Hunt, Mayor of Minnetrista. To my left is Mark Vanderlinde, Arlene Donahue, Bob Christians, Tyler Abens, and Paul Hornby, our city engineer. To my right is our interim city administrator, Mike Baroni, our finance director, Brian Grimm. Paul Falls is walking over here, our public safety director, David Abel, our community development director, and Ron Beatty, our city attorney. Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda, and you have updated minutes. And on the updated minutes, I have one addition, and it's on the May 5th meeting under 3 special presentations. Under, it's the second bullet point. While Three Rivers Park District does not appear amenable to donating parkland for a centralized water treatment plant, they are interested in a possible trail and water collaborative project. Okay, any other changes?
Nope.
Oh, the only thing there is the deletion of one item on
Oh, yeah,
business.
that
and
was
ad.
next after that.
Okay.
Okay, then the other, the other thing, under business items F, 6F, we're going to take out number F, which is approving an agreement for WSB and Associates to provide construction services for the Loring Drive retaining wall reconstruction project. And in its place, we're gonna add that the council is going to consider an estimate for the boulder wall. Discussion. Okay, any other changes to the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the changes mentioned.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 5-0. Okay, persons to be heard. The City Council invites residents to share new ideas or concerns related to city business. However, individual questions and remarks are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. No City Council action will be taken, although the Council may refer issues to staff for follow-up or consideration at a future meeting. They may or may use discretion if speakers are repeating views already expressed or ask for a spokesperson for groups of individuals with similar views. Speakers should state their name and home address at the podium before speaking. First person is Steve Hosmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and council members, and staff, and all the residents. Hi, everybody. I'm going to be talking about water. And so the first verse of Bob Dylan's tune, "The Times They Are A-Changin'," is very pertinent to this. Come gather around people wherever you roam, and I could sing this, but you probably don't want me to, and admit that the waters around you have grown. And accept that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming, or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. Now, the water reference there is very good, but also the times they are changing is very good. You have each received, or should have received, this packet. I'm going to take a minute or two to go through it and then try and conclude some things right at the end. In this packet, it talks about the history of the Jennings Cove primary holding pond at Cove Circle. And that history began in 1988 when that property was developed. In 1995, then owner of the same property that I'm living in now experienced a flood 4 feet high in his lower level. The pond at that point was not dug as deep as it is now. And so between 1995 and 1998, the city and the owner and the engineering firms and everybody wrestled, and the Lake Minnehaha Watershed Creek District, I can never say that right. Anyway, they all wrestled with it and finally come up with a solution that they would dig this pond out deeper. And then there would be enough capacity to store the water so that there would no longer be a problem. And the homeowner said, wait a minute, but there's another problem. You have a 24-inch culvert coming in from this side for storm drains on this side, a 24-inch culvert coming in on this side for storm drains, and a big channel right down the center of a bunch of backyards, all dumping water into this pond, and then you're expecting a 15-inch culvert to take all that out. And that could be a problem. Well, the council elected at that point just to dig out the pond and not to actually go in and add a culvert or add an overflow culvert or anything else. So for about 12 or 13 years, that seemed to work. But as Bob Dylan said, the times they are a-changin'. And anybody who looks at weather patterns understands that. In fact, the National Oceanographic Organization, you've got a sheet of it on there, they came out with new standards for the 1,000-year storms and 100-year storms, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I'm sorry. Those standards came out in 2013 for Minnesota. They replaced standards that were established in the 60s. It was about time. But the problem with those standards is they cut off their data in 2013. So as time progresses, things are changing. Okay, so what's happening? If you look at the sheet that I passed out to you, we'll kind of go past the history. I've already
Mr.
passed through
Hosmer,
that.
you're over the 3-minute limit.
I'm already over 3 minutes?
Yeah,
May I have one more minute?
one more.
Okay, good. $25,000 in losses have been suffered by the two owners of that property since it was built in 1988. And the three things that let us know that there is a problem is that there have been 3 holding pond overruns in 1 year. There's an inadequately designed outflow capacity, and there's been a change in weather patterns. There is a chart that looks like this that will show the height of those storms, the overrun, and the one storm that actually flooded the basement. All right. What I'm asking for, respectfully, is that the council direct the staff to finally look at how to resolve this problem. I know James Whisker personally from another issue. He has said, yes, he would work with the council, of course, and work with staff, of course. So I'm asking, would the council please direct staff to investigate this problem finally and come up with a resolution that will be long-lasting and not something that only lasts for 10 years and then we have to go all over again. Thank you. I'm sorry I ran over.
Thank you, Mr. Hosmer. Ralph Harrison? Oh, Ralph, are you on a well? Or are you
I'm
on?
sorry?
Are you on city water or well? You said you were gonna talk about water project?
I'm on a well.
You are on a well, okay.
Yeah, council members, Mayor Ralph Harrison, 4935 Grandview. I would just like you to listen to your finance director, who you've all, in public, I believe, have said that you have great confidence in, and he has indicated to you, and I think it was, I wasn't at the meeting, but on the June 2nd meeting, the special meeting, he talked about a phased-in option of this new water facility, the significant cost reductions that could come along with that, and from a risk management standpoint, I guess I would be very perplexed, and a lot of the public would be, if this would not be an option on the table. We don't know, what would be the downside to this? It seems like simply good risk management policy. And also, kind of in regards to this, I looked at the YouTube, I wasn't at the last meeting, but Mark, you were talking about this whole water issue and how politics have gotten mixed in with the water issue, but you know, we're talking about a project that is 4 to 5 times what the original costs were gonna be. I mean, you know, money is politics, and you know, that's just the fact of life. The other thing is, repeatedly, and you yourself have, I believe, said this, that, you know, you don't understand why the general public should be concerned about this. I myself being on a well, for example. But this is a GO bond that's funded by all of us. We are all on the hook for this, and if 5 years down the line it doesn't work out, guess who they're gonna come back to take care of this? It's gonna be all of us, not, you know, not just people that are on city water. So that's all I had to say. And one other thing, I believe that Mayor Hunt and I believe Councilmember Donahue, you ran on a campaign that I agreed with in large part concerning this building next door that was funded and people felt it wasn't necessary and that it should have been handled a different way. And we're constantly reminded by you of the $400,000 a year that the taxpayers pay for this. Now, I'm not gonna go into debate about that, but it seems kind of contradictory to me that you would run on a platform like this and not present an option that has no downside risk that I can see and seems to be only a smart risk management move in terms of financing a very large project that we've never financed before. Thanks.
Thank you. George Gulso? Where's George? Is he not here? Huh. Tom Donahue?
Tom Donahue, 6115 Sunnyfield Road. Just a couple questions for our engineer. Last winter we had talked about a project up on Rolling Hills in Meadowview, and I believe they've done some work up there in the last week. There was a company up there doing some grading. Wasn't a city contractor, it was somebody from Loretto. There was a talk of $50,000 being spent up there for gravel and work. If we could get a report on that somewhere along the line as to what's going on, because one of the persons living up there is a contractor himself. There was a company out of Loretto, and I don't know who hired them, if it was from WSB or I don't know if the city hired him or who it was. Mark Erickson was in charge when we had that meeting. Thank you much.
Thank you. Persons to be heard, done. And now we have a special presentation, an introduction of Nick Olson, our Associate Planner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Nick, you want to stand up at the podium? This is Nicholas Olson. Nicholas began with us on Monday, June 2nd, 2 weeks ago. He's our Associate Planner. Just a little bit about Nick. He's a graduate of Bloomington Kennedy High School, also a graduate of the University of Minnesota. He has a Bachelor's of Science degree in Urban Studies with a minor in Architecture and Geography. And before coming to the city, he was the kind of our ideal candidate. We're looking somebody to come here as a associate planner with an internship, and Nick was able to, I think it was 6 months or so that he spent at the city of Golden Valley working as an intern. So we're glad Nick is here. He joins David Abel in our community development or planning area. And I don't know, Nick, if you want to say anything at all. But
Well, thank you, Mike. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward to working with you guys on any planning issues that we'll face during my tenure here. And I just kind of wanted to introduce myself to the residents, those that are here this evening, those that are watching on TV, and those that are at home online. Just give them a face to put to the name, and like I said, I look forward to working with everybody on any planning issues that we will face. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and welcome.
and we're glad Nick is here. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Any changes? We actually talked about the minutes before, but so any changes? Okay.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 5-0. Public hearings. Do you want to introduce it first?
Sure. Yeah, David is up on this one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. This is ordinance number 422, which is establishing the Orchard Cove Storm Sewer Improvement Attached District. Staff is proposing that we establish this district covering all the land that was recently platted as the Orchard Cove plat, or formerly what we called the Wallace property up on, the former address was 950 County Road 110. The purpose of the district is to allow the city to maintain, repair, or reconstruct stormwater improvements within Orchard Cove in the event that the developer or homeowners association would fail to do so, to recover the costs through a tax levy solely against property within that district. Property elsewhere in the city would not be subject to this tax. So this is specific to just the Orchard Cove property and plat. This has been a new standard practice that we have done with all new developments. The most recent before this was the Woodland Cove site where we established the same storm sewer tax district. So this is just another layer of protection if someday in the future that stormwater improvements in that subdivision were not maintained and the homeowners association and or developer failed to do so, the city has another mechanism in which they can step in, get the repairs that are required, and then levy those to the people just within that development and not on the overall city. So the recommended action we have this evening is to conduct the required public hearing. After you close that public hearing, adopt ordinance number 422, which establishes the Orchard Cove Storm Sewer Improvement Tax District.
I'll open the public hearing. Somebody wants to speak? I'll close the public hearing. Council?
No question.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 422.
Also moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we need to authorize the publication of ordinance 422 by title and summary.
So moved.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, our first business item is approving an agreement with Minspec for building inspection services.
Yes, Mayor and Council, in your packet tonight is an agreement with Minspec. Little history on this, you authorized at the last meeting for me to enter into a 2-week contract with Minspec because of the lurch we were left in with our building inspection services. So that is also included in your packet, but I don't know if Scott Qualley, he's here, if he would like to talk at all, but we're very happy with the terms and conditions of the agreement, and if passed, then he's already been working, but we'll be working under the new full agreement. The agreement is for roughly a year and a half through now, through the end of 2015. There is an out clause for either side, but we can certainly talk with council members in the future about if we want to continue with Mr. Qualley's organization sometime next year. I think at the last meeting we thought, well, if we're really moving that well, maybe we'd look at trying to maybe hire our own building inspector, just leaving that opportunity there as an option. So, but we're glad that we're able to reconnect with Minspec and Mr. Qualley, and look forward to working with him. So, I don't know if you want to say anything about it, Scott.
The only thing I have to add is that David had indicated that there was some backlog of permits, and I didn't realize what that really meant until he met me after the meeting and gave me 6 permits, and then we stopped in the next day and picked up, I believe, 9 or 10 more. So we had 16 that had been sitting back from May 3rd that had not been processed by the group, and of those 16, we've issued 12, and we have 4 that are on hold waiting for additional information. So we've cleaned up almost everything that was in that backlog, and then have an additional 5 or 10 or 15, probably closer to 10 or 15 that have come in since that time. So we're working away at those and trying to get things caught back up again.
Good.
Okay, any questions? Yeah, I'll entertain a motion. Approving an agreement with Minspec for building inspection services.
I will make a motion to approve the agreement with the Minspec building inspection services.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 5-0. Okay, now for the water, who is going to lead the water? Thank you, Mr. Paul.
Thank you very much, and we are glad to be back and working in Minnetrista, so I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, water treatment discussion. We've got lots to talk about tonight.
I'm gonna kick this one off just to introduce Brian and Ron Beatty. They have kind of the first couple of pieces of this particular item. So, Brian?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Madam Mayor and Council. I'm gonna run through. I don't know if any of this information is new. If I can get this to work try.
There you go.
Here, thank you. This is on pages 85 through 104 in your packet. I think items 85 through 100. But what I wanted to do is just walk through with council, basically, and just go over the items that are going to be presented at the open house on Wednesday night, and see if there's any further comment. The only real new information is probably, I know there's a couple things that Bolton and Mink, and Mr. Peterson is not here tonight, as far as he'll be at the open house along with Bolton and Mink staff, as well as some city staff, myself, Mr. Baroni. But the first several items in the packet are from Bolton and Mink, so I'll just touch on them briefly, and he'll be able to talk more on Wednesday for those that would like to show up at that open house. Page 85 and 86 are just maps of the different systems. As far as page 85 is the decentralized system, and page 86 here is the central system and the different locations, and he'll be able to explain, I guess, the rationale behind, where the potential locations will be, how the water mains run, and all that type of engineering stuff that I'm just, not that familiar with. Pages 87 and 88 are this was, I believe, at the last council meeting as far as the options, and I think this was even in the Laker this week as far as the advantages and disadvantages of the different options. So you'll see there, like I said, I won't go over them in great detail, because I think at the open house is where staff can get and answer questions and further detail as far as the different advantages, disadvantages, as far as the reverse osmosis versus the gravity filtration, and the decentralized versus the centralized. I'll speak more to the costs as I get into the information there that I've pulled together. The next page, I think that is on page 89. This is actually something new that Mr. Peterson put together, and it talks about he's went ahead and him and his staff have estimated some of the potential savings, with the reverse osmosis. I know that there's been different numbers that have been, I guess, presented, or as far as a range, and what he tried to do here was quantify. Pointer isn't working, but some of the differences for a low user, obviously, those savings, and this is directly to the homeowner. This is not in your utility bill or anything. This is what they would save based on potential salt purchases and regeneration of their water softeners, and you can see that ranges from about $100 from low to a medium user of 172 there to the very high user, I would say, could have savings of about $330 some there. So, but he'll be able to explain more as far as, I think he based that on some averages, family of 4 usage, etc. So, is that? Oh, I guess I need to minimize again here a little bit. What one thing he did mention that will be there will be I don't know how easy this is to see, but it's a pilot water tester, so they'll be able to, actually, the ability to, I guess, taste the difference between the water that's RO and water that's the gravity filtration. So there'll be that availability, I guess, as far as just pure charts and handouts. There'll be, I guess, a little bit of a example to actually sample, or for lack of a better term, I guess, the different types of water there. So he had attached a picture of that unit. Will be there, and it'll be parked outside the police training room that night. As far as the next couple pages, I think this chart also was presented at the June 2nd meeting. It's basically some summary financial information of the 4 different options, and just hitting some of the different high points, and just to use the first option there, the decentralized gravity. I know some of the discussion from the other night were more focused on the central gravity and central reverse osmosis, but we're still presenting the 4 different options to get feedback on. But you can see some of the different factors there as far as projected rate increase. With the decentralized gravity would be 9% annually over the next 5 years. That's you know, with a big capital project and a full build-out, it would be that much per year for the next several years under this option. You can see what the annual cost would be for a medium user, about $570, broken down quarterly, what that amount would be, and then we also projected out, you know, what that would be for 2020, annual and quarterly, and then also what you know, potential principal and interest would look on those on that different financing scenario there. One thing I did want to mention, I did want to just touch on the note here, because I think I've gotten a couple questions as far as some of the growth projections and different things like that. You know, we do take that seriously as far as, you know, the finance staff. You know, I know Bolton and Mink, as the engineering firm, they do their capacity and they do their you know, scenarios based on, they use the Met Council projections and, you know, potentially 160 new homes a year. Conservatively, we don't think that's reasonable, or, you know, so that's where I keep talking about, you know, is 75 homes a year, is 100 homes, you know, for the purposes of these pro formas, we've used 100 homes a year. Obviously, if you drop it down to 70 units, you know, instead of a potential 7 to 16% increase per year, you're looking at maybe 12 to 25, you know, so it all is dependent. I mean, the growth plays a big part, and that's where I guess in the last point there, from a pure finance perspective, and we'll gather, you know, input on Wednesday night, using some sort of phased approach is what from, you know, I would probably recommend, just from a pure, as the finance director, obviously. We'll have further discussions about that with council, and once we have the open house. So just to guard against how that growth matches Met Council and what Bolton and Mink's used for projections. Page 93 was a chart that we presented at a previous meeting that had some of the different construction costs per year. You can see the construction cost under each of the different options is, obviously the big year is 2016. That's when the treatment, you know, would be done. But then there's also some, you know, wells and towers and some other infrastructure that's included. That some of that we're going to need regardless of whether we have water treatment or not. But the lion's share of the capital cost is related to water treatment. And then you can see there the difference between the gravity and the RO is reflected there, and the different options is how those costs change. I think pages 94 through 96 have all been presented before, as far as it's sort of jogging back and forth based on the size of these different charts, but what it would look like as far as for that low, medium, and high. I think on the previous slide, I used more of the medium user. You can see for a low user, obviously the changes, it's the percents are still the same, but the dollar amounts, you know, are not as big a difference. So, but you can see there as far as what we used as our baseline for 2014, 2015 projected, and then 2020 projected for each of them. Low, medium was reflected in those previous spreadsheets here, and then high, which I think we've mentioned, these are the users we're trying to get to conserve more. And obviously, even with our change we made for 2014, we made our change to the fee schedule based on implementing our more conservation schedule that was more reflective of encouraging conservation for our tiers. So that's pages 94 through 96. Pages 97 and 98 are more, these are the sheets that were provided by Bolton and Mink, and they break down more. I think as I was talking about earlier, there is different components to it. The WTF is the water treatment facility, as far as you know, that, and then there's also I think I gave Seth, when he was here from Bolton and Mink, some grief over that, yeah, using that. But and there's also wells, water mains, etc. So there is, you know, some costs that are some are tied to the water treatment facility, some are irregardless of that the city just through growth is going to need. But just wanted to we'll have that information that will be probably in handout form for the, you know, the attendees of the open house, as far as it's also available through our public packet, you know, as far as what those breakdowns that were presented for the centralized and decentralized, from Bolton and Mink. Trying to balance, I know the council and these have been presented already, I'm just trying to give a quick overview as far as, information, and then I'll ask council if they have any other questions or things that they think we should be providing, for this open house. This shows here, and actually the, north and central, south, that middle column will be taken out, but as this shows, there is additional operational maintenance costs for both gravity filtration and for gravity filtration with RO, so that's showing here, some of those estimates. I mean, there's just not the capital, increases, there's also, it ranges anywhere from the gravity, about 50 to 63,000 a year estimated additional costs, or with the, reverse osmosis, that cost goes to about 143 to 160, and we've accounted for that in all of our pro formas, and that's accounted for as why some of the projected rate increases. So, just more information for residents to have there. And then last, I think I touched on this already. I mean, the big unknown is the growth projections as far as, I mean, we know we've got a lot of lots that are platted. I mean, the biggest is Woodland Cove and, Mattamy and some of the builders and developers. We're not using, obviously, like I said earlier, the full Met Council projections, because I don't think we're gonna be to 13,000 people by 2030. But we've backed it off, and by about a third or so, and, do we even need to do more, and what's the sweet spot? I think most people can understand if growth doesn't come as fast, the rate increases would need to be higher, just to pay for the debt and the principal and interest related to the project. So, but it's all, I mean, I guess, yeah. Or was it, if I was not Nostradamus, I probably, I guess, would would be, I don't know, doing something else maybe. So, I don't know if. That's pretty much what I wanted to touch on. I don't know if we want to stop there and see if council has any questions. That would be for the information presented for Wednesday night before I would turn it over to Mr. Beatty. He's got a couple memos in there, or.
Well, I have a couple of things. I
Sure.
mean, we talked earlier about doing a 75 pro forma, or it's just 75, rather than the 100 homes.
Yeah.
So could we get that by Wednesday?
Yeah, because I got the estimate. I worked with Ellers to be able to run that, and they got me an email with the range, but I would be able to have more actual handouts, or more just the amounts showing. We much more just want to see, let me go back to this other page here. I'm guessing you want to see something as far as what those rate increases, like where where we have here 7% annual for next 4 years for centralized gravity. Say if it's 75 units per year, I think this went up to like 12% or something. That if
Yeah.
you would
If
want
we
more
could
of that
just,
number.
can we just have one that's just 75 units a
Sure.
year?
And just
And show what the
yeah, because the main
difference
thing
is.
that would change would be, well, obviously then, yeah, the projected annual cost. So I could basically plug in those different things. The principal, yeah, that last item doesn't change as far as, and that's the city's locked in, but how it gets spread as far as, yeah, I mean, over a number of units, so.
And then can you take out the drinking water, all the drinking water facilities, and just show if the growth was 100 homes a year to 2030, what the water cost would be?
Just do one at 75 and do one at 100, or I'm missing
No.
the
Do one, like you've done, at 100, but take out any drinking water plant. And just, because I don't want people to think that because if we don't do a drinking water plant, that doesn't mean that water rates aren't gonna go up. They're going to go up if you have growth.
Right.
And you're still gonna need, our central, water, district doesn't have storage. You're still gonna need a water tower there. You're still gonna need piping. You're still gonna need additional wells if you really are gonna grow at that rate. So
So you're saying
I don't want people to think that their rates aren't gonna go up if they don't do a drinking water treatment plant, because they still are.
So you're saying take out the line item for the water treatment facility that is shown
Yeah.
here and show what the different rates
Yes.
would be? That's what
Yes.
you're asking?
Yep.
Okay.
I think you and I had talked about it, is if we don't do a water treatment plant at all, you had said you're still gonna go up probably a couple % a year.
Yeah, I'd
Just
assume it
for
would be more
towers and-
inflationary,
Right.
because you're still adding, users, but you're taking out a big chunk of the capital. So, I mean, but I think there still could be some
There's still a
What
water
is it?
tower,
Is
there's
it
still
2%,
wells.
is it 3%? I don't have that right now, or.
Right. Yeah,
So-
just so people understand that, it's still, just because we're growing, it's gonna ratchet up to, we need the wells, we need the towers,
We're
we
probably
still
gonna
need
still
them.
need to interconnect the systems, whether we do a
Mm.
water treatment plant or not.
Okay. Okay, so run those couple.
Okay. And then, yeah, so that was, any other questions before Ron?
I just had some input here. I'd like to know Wednesday from 6 to 8, when we do this. Hopefully we'll have a great turnout of the users. I'm sure everyone here has thought of a way to capture the information or input from the users so that we, as a staff and council, can make an intelligent decision on what is the majority looking for. And I'm not quite sure where we're headed in that direction. Do we have a way to capture the input of the users so we can kind of see what the majority is looking for and what they want?
Well, there's a couple of things to talk about with that. One will be the next item that Mr. Beatty's going to address.
Okay, good.
But he's not gonna talk about what you can do, but he's gonna talk about what you can't do.
Well, I understand
Because
what
that's
we can
important.
do, but I think we're
Well, no.
looking at a consensus of an input
Right,
here.
and
so
then
I do understand that.
that's item 2 under B, and I think
Okay.
item 3 is where I'm gonna ask you what you wanna do. So, because there are some timing issues here, I mean, the next time we'll meet is end of July. And so what I don't wanna have happen when we walk away from our meeting here tonight is not have some direction. I know we won't have the input from the residents, but we might be able to come up with a strategy to ask them. And maybe with some caveats that depending on what we hear on Wednesday, we have some flexibility on how to do that. I think there's a number of ways to do that, but I think we should be able to talk about
Okay.
both of those things. So Councilmember Christians, what we don't want to do is be too prescriptive here tonight, but we want to have some flexibility. But I think it's sort of a good segue to ask Mr. Beatty to speak about the 2 items that he included in the packet, so.
Okay, then I have one other thing too,
Okay.
Mike, and that is, at some point down the road, and I know, Brian, you talked about like phasing in. I strongly believe that the possibility of working, for example, with Mound does exist. And that's something just put in the back of your mind that I do believe that Minnetrista and Mound will be working closer together, and there's a potential and a possibility of working together on this long term.
And they have been invited. I invited Maple Plain, Mound, Spring Park, and St. Bonnie for Wednesday night.
And I
They've all
do
been
know
invited.
there has been some interest that I've been made aware of, especially with the city of Mound. So, I mean, it's out there a ways, but I mean, it's still
Right.
something that I think has the potential.
I think just pertinent to this particular subject for this city and our residents, that whatever we do obviously could be expanded in the future.
That's very key.
But
That is key.
I think the cost and whatever option we end up selecting and whatever we end up charging to residents to build and put online, I don't think is substantially gonna change here for the short-term future, but I think the stuff you're talking about
Right.
is potentially long-term future, so.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a couple of different things going on here, so.
So just to make, aware of
Yeah.
that, I think that's a potential possibility.
So, okay. So I think at this point, maybe, Mr. Beatty, if you're ready
Sure.
to talk about a couple of, items that need to be
Yeah.
clarified, I believe.
Mayor and council, there are 2 memos in the packet from my office. Probably the simpler one is the one we just talked about a little bit. It has to do with whether there can be a vote on the water treatment facility. The reason I raise that is because I want to make sure everybody's on the same page on this. That term has been used quite a bit at some of the past council meetings. I have interpreted that rather loosely, and I think council probably understands that we're not talking about a referendum. We're talking about soliciting public comment in whatever way you choose That's what the city administrator is talking about. Now, trying to get some input from you tonight as to how you want to do that. But I have heard the term referendum used several times by folks in the audience, and that's a very specific term. That does imply a public vote. And so the purpose of my memo is, if anyone thinks that there is a public referendum coming on this, that's not going to happen. Not only is it not going to happen, it cannot happen. That would be considered an advisory election, and for some reasons that I outline in the memo, statutory cities are not allowed to have advisory memos or advisory elections. So decide how you want to solicit input from folks, but just make sure that everyone understands they're not going to be a formal election or vote in a referendum on this matter. The second item was written by Julie Ennington of my office, who is city's bond counsel. And again, it touches on some of the things that we've talked about tonight and some of the things that have been talked about in previous meetings. Again, my interest was to make certain that everybody was on the same page on this. Sort of big picture on the financing is what we're talking about is selling what I'll call 444 bonds. And those are named after the statutory section that authorizes this kind of debt. That kind of debt comes in two flavors, I guess I would say. It can be sold as revenue debt. It can also be sold as general obligation debt. When you sell revenue debt, that whatever it is supported only by the revenues of that project. It's riskier, and therefore you pay a higher interest rate. What we're talking about is the general obligation option in this case, because it's ultimately backed by the full faith and credit of the city. The city gets a lower rate, interest rate, when you sell that debt. What will happen, we're talking about selling this through PFA. You don't have to do that. You could sell these bonds on the open market. It's highly desirable, though, to sell them through PFA because you get a much better interest rate. So that would certainly be what you would want to do, and that's what we've talked all along about doing. That debt, those bonds, will have to be supported primarily by rates for the system. In other words, what this council and future councils are going to have to do is, on an annual basis, analyze the rates to make certain that they are sufficient to support debt service. Brian was just talking about that, and we've had a lot of discussion at past meetings about what's the correct number of future users, and are we going to guess too low and are we going to guess too high? I don't know what the right number is, but whatever the ultimate number is, this council and future councils has to understand that whether you get it right or wrong, that's going to have to be adjusted on an annual basis, because the rates will have to be set to support that debt. And so if there are fewer users coming online than are anticipated, then the rates are going to have to go up commensurately to make sure that the rates support that debt. It's a general obligation, though, bond, however, which means that ultimately, if the rates on a temporary basis do not meet the debt service, the council will have to levy taxes, general taxes, to support that. And that's not just this council, it will be future councils. When you sell this debt, you will enter into legal documents which will require the city to do both of those things. Set rates appropriately, and if worse comes to worse, levy taxes. So again, in an effort to make certain that everybody understands what the risks are of this kind of financing, that was the reason for my memo.
Right, and if it is, let's say, worst case scenario, that you do have to levy, you can then pay them back with the rates the following year.
Yes, you will have, in fact, you will have to
Yep.
raise the rates even that much more the following year so that you pay back the general fund.
Right. So how often does it happen that the rates don't match?
Well, I guess it depends on how diligent the city or the future councils are in analyzing those rates, because again, you're obligated to do that. Typically what happens, I mean, the levying and I'm getting a little bit over my head because I'm not a bond attorney, but levying is a relatively rare occurrence. Typically what happens is that if the rates are analyzed on an annual basis and set appropriately, generally that's sufficient. The scenario that you'd have to be concerned with is if for whatever reason people don't pay their bills in sufficient numbers, and so suddenly during the course of the year, the money isn't coming in as anticipated, and you got bond payments that you have to meet, and the money isn't there to do it, to make those, meet that debt service, that's the scenario in which there's often actually borrowing from the general fund and if necessary, levying for it. But again, it's relatively rare, and it depends on how diligently this and future councils watch those rates and are willing to raise them, if necessary, to support debt service.
Is this, excuse me, Ron, is this bond very similar to the one that currently we have in effect for the police station and the public works building? Is the bond similar?
No, it's a different kind of debt. I mean, this is the kind of debt you sell for water facilities. And again, you can do it as a revenue bond or as a general obligation
But as a
bond.
general obligation bond,
Yes.
which you said would make more sense to do so because it's
Lower
Lower
rate,
cheaper, lower
right,
rate.
right.
That's why I was curious, is it similar to what we have
No, we-
currently?
We paid a premium for the EDA. That's because it wasn't a GO bond.
Okay.
I mean, what this bond would have in common with any other GO debt is the fact that ultimately the taxpayers are on the hook. In other words, when we do 429 projects, assessment projects, those are generally general obligation bonds. And again, we're careful, hopefully, in setting the assessments at an appropriate level and making sure that we've got revenue to come in to cover that.
Okay.
And we try to make sure that this never happens, there's never a problem. But ultimately, whenever there is general obligation debt, the city is ultimately responsible, if necessary, to levy debt. And it's because of that full faith and credit pledge that the city can get a little bit lower interest rate in the market, because the bondholder knows that if worse comes to worse, the council's gonna levy for that.
Right.
I guess, yeah, Hunt, to your earlier question, the only case I know of, and that's just because I live there, is, I know over in the city of Mare, they do levy some dollars for their water and sewer infrastructure that they did, I think just based on the growth just had dried up for a period, so I think they had to do some temporary levies. Everyone's on the systems there, so it's a little different as far as that component. I don't envision growth just drying up here. But that's the only case that I'm aware of.
Well, that's why it's good to be doing your due diligence and looking at all possibilities.
Absolutely.
There's one thing I wanted to bring up, and I know it's gonna come up, and it has to do with this $4.9 million project. How are we gonna address that? I mean, I think most people understand that that was a get-started project. You know, within 2 years, we were gonna be looking at another water treatment plant, another tower. Are we gonna be able to address that? 'Cause like you say, I know it's gonna come up.
Well, and the project was 18 million, it wasn't 4 point
Well, I know,
whatever.
but it's been thrown around that, how we're going from 4.9 million to 20 million. I mean, like I say, that question's gonna come up, so we're gonna have to, have some answers for it.
Go ahead.
I guess I can start with that. I guess what I'm probably gonna emphasize, I mean, from my perspective, I guess, that is not really something that we are, we have the options that I guess the council's approved that we're showing. And from my perspective, the dollar amounts that are being shown are at the very high or the worst case, the non-phased in. And I guess what I'm gonna explain to people, I guess, and from what I've heard to council is I think we're not gonna bite off all this
No.
at
No,
once.
Right, and that's what I want to make
No.
sure that
Yeah.
that we do
But
explain that to people.
you
that-
plan for the worst.
Right, this $20
Yeah.
million is for long-term, this isn't startup cost.
Correct, yeah, and I've even talked, and I think Seth Peterson, when he was here last week, said you know, they're showing everything, when, if, you know, if I go back to that sheet that had it scheduled out per year, I mean, I think the dollar amount in that 2016 of construction, I believe, is gonna come down, whether it's by 50% or 75% or something, because I just don't envision this council. There's been too many examples of too many cities that have built too big, too fast. I don't
Yep.
think we're gonna do that, at least.
No,
So,
no, and I want people to
But
understand
you also don't
that.
want people to be surprised at the end and go, oh, we had no idea it was really gonna cost that much by 2030.
sure, yeah, and then as the growth comes, you can phase it in, but I think I think we're gonna be able to mitigate those rate increases by doing what we feasibly think we're gonna need to do to get through, to, you know, for the next 10 years, and then see what happens, so you don't end up with a plant that may outlive its, maybe obsolete before all the users are here to, you know, that are really needed for capacity. So that's what and I think from talking with Bolton and Mink, they understand that perspective, and I think council's on board with that too, that's from what I'm hearing.
I agree with Mark. I think we have to be prepared for that, because for a long time, when we started this thing, initially when WSB was involved, this $4.5 million was thrown around time and time and time again. Well, you know, that again, as Mark said, that was a 2.5-year phase one piece, so it wasn't even a really fair comparison, because you might have that person saying, okay, well, what's the comparison? And there was no, you know, we're apples, and, you know, not comparing apples to apples here. So your point is very well taken, Mark. I'd like to think that we could maybe, you know, look, that was a 2.5-year plan in one phase.
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up somewhere in the middle between that and what Bolton
I
Mink's
agree.
presented,
But it's
based on,
the
to try to.
people who are here, are they gonna be able to understand that? Are we gonna be able to show that to them? And that's the trick, is can we show them accurate, what is taking place? So, that's a
Yeah, I'm
tricky
trying to think
part.
of the real easy way to show that based on, without having that, we haven't really gotten to that discussion yet with council as far as what the final design's gonna look like. I think first we're just trying to get down to what option, we've got the
Right.
4 options on the
Right.
table.
No, that's
And-
important.
And then from there, I mean, I think once we pick whether it's central gravity or central RO or whatever that option is, I think that's when we can define how big we're gonna build this thing, and if we're gonna build it at, because I think we'd wanna build it, yeah, I think what's presented right now with Bolton and Mink has, I mean, could last us 40, 50 years. I don't think we wanna build that big.
No.
So, I think once we decide on the option, then we can
Yeah.
whittle down.
I was just going to emphasize what Brian is touching on now. I think it would be foolish for us to start costing out things on 3 of the 4 options
Yeah.
that may not
Right.
get picked. So, you know, let's get our input on Wednesday when we start talking about, I guess, item B3, how you want to get some input, and so it's accurate. We can figure that out, and then from there, I think, then you might be able to come up with some, here's initial cost, here's the first 5 years cost, here's the first 10 years cost, something like that, so, based on these growth projections, whether it's 75, 100, or whatever,
Right,
so.
so,
So I think for now, for some of this for Wednesday night, we may just have to verbalize, and I think we
Right.
have qualified staff there and people that will be able to explain it, because some of this is just with the moving parts, I don't know if you can capture it on a sheet of paper.
Right. Well,
or-
you get all the answers, right, Brian?
Sure he does. Just ask
That's
him.
what I've been told.
yeah. So I think we should talk about surveying resident input, and how we want to do that.
Yeah, and the reason to have that on there is, I think it's gonna be somewhat dependent on what kind of input we hear from our residents when they come and visit us on Wednesday from 6 to 8. There are a number of ways to do this, and one of the things you could do is, you know, we have a database of users, and, you know, we have their account numbers, their names, their addresses. We could send a mailing to them. There's some cost involved with that. What I want to make sure that the council gets, in my opinion, what I want to make sure the council get is kind of one answer per household. What I don't want to do is, and I've heard it mentioned, I think it was by Seth or somebody else, like a Survey Monkey or something. That just requires an email address. I could create 10 email addresses tomorrow.
And but
Vote
you
10
could put
times.
your account number in.
Yeah, that's my point. I said, we gotta figure out some way to tie in their account number, so,
Yeah.
without doing it so we don't violate private data laws, that kind of thing, but some way to get kind of a one I won't use the word vote, but one response per
Per household.
household, so, and I guess it'll be up to residents to decide how they want to respond to it. I think we'll get a flavor for that on Wednesday, where people are at. Maybe we won't, I don't know, but I would think that, if they're educated, if they come Wednesday and been following it in the newspaper, looking at the packets, if they want to come to the open house, they might be able to give us some, really good feedback, and that may help us define how you want to do it. But I'm looking at trying to get it from the kind of a per household user. The other thing that hasn't really been talked about, and it sort of touches on the GO bond aspect of it, is I don't know how open the council would be to just getting feedback from, I guess, non-users, because they could be, not say it's going to be, but they could be on the hook financially for some of this. So I don't know what level you want to get input from people that are on wells versus being on city water.
And there's also the people who aren't on it now, but
That
maybe
could
on
be
it
on
in
it.
a year or two.
Right. Because they're all potential
So
participants.
we really have three populations. We have ones that are current users, two that might want to be users,
They-
and three
available.
who are never going to be users in the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, and so I don't know how you want to quantify that. So that becomes a larger task to try to get everybody's input, but I'm open to anything the council would like
Well,
to see done, but.
The odds of anybody else paying for this, if we size it right and set the rates right, are that it's the users that are going to pay for it.
True. But the open house will, even if you're a non-user that's even going to be on the system soon, you can still come and give your 2 cents to council members or
absolutely.
whoever, staff.
And
or-
I also want some kind of a comment, so people can write comments
Yeah, we
on
can do
any
that.
response that they
Oh,
have.
some sort of, yeah, as far as a comment card or something, I'll take a leave in
Yeah,
a box or something.
Is that what we're thinking, to do a comment card in their bills?
sure. Well,
And
or
when does
some,
their next bill go out?
Soon. I mean,
Soon.
it would be going out by, like, so yeah, that's what we'd need.
but it could be a special mailing too, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, but it would
we-
be cheaper if we could put it in their bill.
Correct, but.
We just do the postcards.
Yeah,
Okay.
So that really wouldn't, it almost
Oh,
has
that's
to have
right.
to be a separate mailing, so,
Okay,
um,
so it's got to be a separate mailing.
but we're trying to figure out the most economical, but yet gives you the best answers.
Because I guess,
So-
yeah, I mean, a question that I would have, and I'm assuming Mike has probably too, is we'll gather this information on the comment cards or from talking to people on Wednesday night. Our next council meeting is July 21st.
We don't want to wait that long.
I mean, are we
No.
looking for us to send something out in that interim period as far as to the,
Yeah.
and I guess to the water users for now again, or?
The only thing that I could suggest is maybe creating a subcommittee of the council to work with myself and Brian on kind of the best approach. We sort of did that with the community survey. We had former Mayor Fisher and Ann work with me on kind of what do we want to ask, and kind of keep the ball rolling, not wait. So, I mean, we could do something like that because, like I said, we just don't know what we're going to hear on Wednesday until we get there. So, and we're not going to
Right.
meet for 5 weeks until then. So,
So
I don't
how-
want to lose momentum on this
No,
for you
I
folks.
agree.
I'd be willing to work with you guys on that.
Anybody else?
I think we can go 2, 3 is a meeting, so we got to go with 2.
I would do it if nobody else is interested.
No, it's too busy this time of year.
Okay.
Okay.
So Kyle and I,
Okay, that'd be great.
okay.
Because I think that subcommittee then would want to filter down a mailing out to try to,
Do we have your authorization, the other three of you? to-
Yes.
Okay.
because I think we've talked about before, whether even after the open house, whether we narrow it from 4 to 2 options. I mean, that, we almost did that last time, or, or
Yeah.
whether we leave out 4 options, and then obviously, is it check a box, which one you like best after seeing these few different advantages,
Mhm.
disadvantage costs, that type of thing, or, I mean, that's what I guess we'll need to work with that
Yeah.
subcommittee as far as.
I just don't want to lose momentum
I
till
agree.
July 21st,
No,
and,
definitely.
What has been presented so far is, I think, is very, very well done.
okay,
I mean, it's got some pluses and minuses and some costs that are projections, but
yeah.
it's a good start. It's very well done.
And Brian's been doing a great job on this, working with Seth at Bolton and Mink, so
Yeah.
hopefully we'll have a good turnout, we'll have a lot of information, we'll have a way for people to give us comments, and then we'll go from there on trying to figure out a way to see where we're going on this whole project, because it's a big one.
And on that note, do you think we should have some type of citizen advisory committee? Or do you think it's too late to do that?
I don't know if it's too late. I think that's maybe something you can talk about when we kind of get down to the point of actually, you're looking for advising on what to do?
Or
Or,
that some, a group of citizens that could go and tour plants and, when it's, kind of have a,
Yeah.
talk about,
I don't know if, my take on this is maybe this is not the right time to do it. Maybe it's soon, but it's maybe not.
Okay.
So
I
I
just
think
wanted
maybe
to-
July, August, we'll see where we're at.
okay,
And it might work, it might not. So, I mean, I'm gonna rely on Bolton and Mink and on Brian to kind of help guide us through the engineering and financing chunk of this whole thing. You guys are gonna be the ones that ultimately decides what we do.
Cause that might be something, once we get back that input from the mailer,
Yeah,
that
maybe-
might be something that,
Right.
you know,
Bounce it
if
off
it's
some people.
overwhelming some,
Yeah.
or if there's a real split, or, I mean, then
Right. I mean,
whether we should form a citizen committee at that point, or.
yeah, okay. I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah,
'cause-
you might have some more data to work with to make that decision versus trying to do it now.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, should we move on to the Lyle Park Tennis Court? I'm so disappointed. I've just learned to play tennis.
We can still play tennis, you just might not be playing at Lyle Park, so I think I'll turn this over to Paul to make a comment on. If you wanna go ahead, Paul.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. We did receive a bid for the Lyle Park tennis courts. That was disappointing. The lowest bid was by GL Contracting for an amount of $311,053.70. The engineer's estimate was $249,605. We did talk to some of the contractors that did not bid to try to figure out why they didn't bid, and primarily because of the wet spring. Their current project load, their construction schedule is compressed, and they didn't have time to bid. We actually did talk to one contractor who forgot to bid, but he forgot to bid because he was too busy during the bidding phase, so he intended to but did not. In reviewing the bids, we are recommending that the council adopt a resolution rejecting the bids and authorize rebidding either in the early winter months, January or February of next year.
And I did have a email conversation today with the mayor, and it is disappointing for those residents that were looking forward to getting this in, but as I mentioned to her, we would not be doing our due diligence and giving good advice to the elected officials here if we recommended that this get approved tonight at the cost, so it's $70-something thousand above what we thought it would cost. So as disappointing as that is, I think we're better off waiting, and hopefully we'll get a better price next year, so.
Okay, council?
I'll make a motion to reject the bid and authorize rebidding of this project in the spring.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Okay, I think this is Paul. Approve plans and specs and authorize advertisement for bids for County Road 151 and County Road 19 trunk water main improvements.
Yes, if you recall, this is the trunk water main that would be extended also to serve the Red Oak development along County Road 151 and County Road 19. This contains about 4,700 feet of trunk water main. It's a fusible PVC that would be installed by a directional drilling or directional boring method. It includes hydrants and some pavement restoration where they need to have boring pits, and also it includes some of the turf, or include the turf establishment and control. Staff recommends adopting a resolution approving plans and specifications and authorizing the advertisement for bids for the project.
Any questions?
No.
I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve plans and specs and authorize the advertising of bids for County Road 151 and County Road 19 trunk water main improvement.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay, and then, the next one was to talk about the boulder wall estimate. This is a item that we covered in our work session. Do you wanna Representative
We
Paul?
do have item E also.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed it,
The
sorry.
police
Oh,
cars.
No, Trillium Bay. Sorry. Number E, approving Trillium Bay rehab project, accepting bids and awarding contract.
This project is through Public Works. We had some miscellaneous items that, on Trillium Bay. Schedule A was to install, reinstall sanitary sewer castings, and that would include an I&I film on the outside, or a gasket on the outside to reduce infiltration. Schedule B was for the removal and replacement of some curb and gutter, and adjusting castings on those catch basins. And then Schedule C was for the curb and gutter removal and replacement in various areas with a 4-inch drain tile. When we received bids, the Schedule A appeared to be reasonable to the staff. However, the other Schedule B and C seemed that that was a little high, and those items could be rebid. So staff recommends approving the resolution accepting the quotes for Schedule A and awarding the contract for Schedule A work to Whitmer Construction in the amount of $20,548.
Any questions?
I'm going to abstain from bidding on this because Whitmer Construction is actually a relative of mine,
Okay.
so I don't want any conflict.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
Does anybody want to make a,
I'll make a motion to accept the quote for Schedule A and awarding a contract to Whitmer Construction in the amount of $20,548.
I'll second it.
all those in favor?
Aye.
4-0.
One
Oh, no,
abstain.
it's 4-1.
4-0, one
4-0.
abstain.
No, it is
Right.
4-0, okay.
Or one abstain.
And then the next one is the discussion of the Boulder Wall estimate for Loring Drive.
And that item, as we talked about in the work session, was to discuss having requesting the contractor accumulate an estimate for a change order if we were to tier the wall. And we had some good discussion in the work session about that. So from a council consideration standpoint, if you'd like to authorize staff to work with the contractor to accomplish that, we would look for that authorization.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay. Now, administrative items, approving the claims. Any questions on the claims?
I'll make a motion to accept the claims as printed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 5-0. Council reports. I did go to my first Northwest League meeting. Neither speaker showed up, so it was kind of it was an interesting meeting. It was fun to talk to some other mayors and council members from other cities. Everybody was talking about flooding and I&I problems. And we had a representative from the Met Council there, and they shared some of the I&I things that they're thinking about down the road. But overall, it was a pretty non-eventful meeting. I haven't been to a police communications committee meeting yet, and I don't know when that is.
When is the next one?
We need to schedule one, so we'll be doing that shortly around the holiday, probably after
Okay.
Okay.
the holiday.
And then I did go to the LMCD emergency meeting. I don't know if I reported on that last time. It is minimum wake across the entire Lake Minnetonka, and that's about it.
There was a Pioneer Sarah Creek meeting. Unfortunately, I was working out of town last week. I did get some information secondhand. Bowser was concerned about our third generation plan. And apparently, like I say, this is secondhand, they are not real happy with us. And it sounds like we are gonna have to do something different. What that is, I don't know. Sounds like there's a few options on the table. I will try and find those out firsthand and bring them back to the council.
Do you think that one of those options might be asking the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District to take over the rest of Minnetrista?
Well, it sounds like it's a possibility. like I say, it's, right now, it's pretty up in the air.
Because we haven't done a project with Pioneer Sarah Creek in years, have we?
No, not that I know.
And that's the problem.
Right, so,
Yeah.
so we should know more here in the next, hopefully, month.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, yeah. Any other, did you go to planning commission?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. And road committee is when?
Is it next
Coming
week?
up next week, I
Next
believe,
week
on
or the
Tuesday.
following next week.
Okay.
And we'll have something to talk about now that we have the plan that Paul presented tonight. So.
Okay, Arlene?
I have nothing.
I would like to see the city of Minnetrista participate in the Spirit of the Lakes for July 17th, 18th, and 19th. And this is my reasoning for this. Number one, I think it would be very good exposure and show that we want to work closely with the city of Mound. It'll show some effort from our part. Number two, if you look at the main sponsors currently, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the main sponsors, in addition to the city of Mound, are Kennedy and Graven, your law firm. Also, Bolton and Mink, the engineering firm. They're all major sponsors of this. And I think it would be, personally, I think it's important that we become a sponsor, as is Bolton and Mink and Kennedy and Graven. Okay. And participate. What does that mean? Okay. What it means is that for the sponsorship that will get you in the paper, it'll get you on 4,000 handouts and 10,000 flyers. It'll get you your name or logo on the bandstand, if you want to call it that, which sits in the park, okay, Surfside. And it also will get you either one, an entry in the parade, or 3 cars. Okay? What does that mean and what does that cost? That costs $1,000 is that sponsorship to do that. That is currently what the major sponsors are participating in. And again, as I said, Bolton and Mink, Kennedy and Graven Law Firm are part of those sponsors. I think we should be too.
I'd be willing to throw in money for it.
Then the question is do we want to float? Do we want a car? Do we want to do something?
Arlene and I
But
want
I
a
want
pink
the exposure.
Mustang. Yeah.
I'd like to see us get the exposure. I think it'd be good.
So would you guys be interested? I don't want to take it out of city funds. I'd be happy to write a check.
That's fine.
What do you think?
That
If it-
means it would be, if we went that route and the council and mayor participate, each one write a check for $200, throw it in, and it'll be, then how do you do that? Do you just show the city of Minnetrista, the mayor and council of Minnetrista? How do we put that on the flyers, the handouts, all the other things that take place?
I think we need.
How do you do that?
I think we need some.
Uh-oh, I think we're doing something wrong.
Straight up the pot.
How do we do that? Well, you would know, because you're a sponsor. I mean, you're a law firm.
Well, it's going to
Well,
be different, though.
It's different because what Brian and I were discussing is if you're going to do it personally, then what you're doing, I think, is making a donation to the city, and that's fine. That's admirable. But then the city, like any donation, we have to accept. The council has to accept those donations. And I think what Brian was thinking of is how are we going to do that?
Well, do we
when we
write
d-
a check to the city of Minnetrista, to you, or to city of Minnetrista,
What would
give it
be
to
the
you?
reaction of Minnetrista? I mean, I don't care, I mean, the way, I think it's important for us to be involved. Now from a standpoint of the, president and the association who operate and oversee the Spirit of the Lakes, if we do it individually, so the money has to come from, I think, the city, if we're showing the city logo, the city banner, and it's the advertisements that are taking place. Like I said, you got 14,000 flyers and newspaper and all those things that go with it.
So can we make a resolution to make a donation, then can we vote to accept the donation to pay for the,
Well, here's one thought. Maybe you should have, I mean, I agree, I think it ought to come from the city. And so maybe you ought to make that motion tonight that the city will participate. And then any of you who personally wish to make a donation back to the city to defray some of that cost are certainly free to do that now or anytime in the future. And like any other donation, the council has to accept them by a supermajority and resolution and so forth. So the city could pay for it, and then anybody who wants to make a contribution at a future meeting, the council could accept those donations.
Oh, okay.
The thing that we have here, is we're running out of time. In fact, we're already, I mean, we gotta do this. If we're gonna do this, we gotta do it like now. And, there's two parts that are involved. One, obviously, is the check that has to be written out to Spirit of the Lakes. Two, is the logo or what would be put on. I assume we could just use the logo like the city of Mound does, but we would need that in I think what's called a digital form. That would have to get also to the president of the committee of the Spirit of the Lake so that they can get that on the flyers and the ad that will be forthcoming.
If you provide me with that information, we'll get that to you. We have digital versions of that because we print newsletters, et cetera.
I will give it to you before I leave tonight.
Sounds good.
Okay, so do we want to vote on having the city pay for it, and then we make the donations to the city, and they can accept them, or we can accept them later?
Yeah, that sounds like that'll work.
Okay,
That
so
works.
I'll entertain a resolution, or,
Are we done yet?
So we'll have you authorize the,
Council should authorize the expenditure of the $1,000 tonight by motion. So as Bob says, the check can go out because time is limited. And then again, in the future, anybody who wishes to contribute towards reimbursement of that is free to do so.
I guess the last question I would have, and Ron, I'm sure you know this, like, community festivals like this are things that, I know the state auditor has their list of things we can contribute to. We're limited to contribute to certain things or whatever, and this is one of them that community
City
festivals.
festivals are fine.
Right.
okay, so, I'll make a motion to authorize payment of $1,000 to the Spirit of the Lakes Festival, and that the city of Minnetrista will be a supporter.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
I think we just have Tyler yet.
And Tyler?
I don't have anything.
We don't have a lot of
Okay.
time.
Staff reports?
We have a few here. The first one is the Enchanted Lane flood mitigation update. I don't know if I really have a update per se, other than to kind of talk a little bit about the work our Public Works Department did last week on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Most people are aware we've had terrible rain and water, and out in this part of our town, there was a road that's, I think it's Tuxedo, that's under 9 or was under 9 or 10 inches of water. And so our Public Works crew, along with, I'm trying to find the name of the other company, you're gonna have to help me.
Barber Construction.
Barber, thank you. They're from St. Bonnie. They've done a great job. They put down about 14 inches of rock and then kind of secured that with some asphalt millings. And so they've basically got a temporary road. I mean, they did an outstanding job. There's a fair number of people that were upset because of the water. Not that we could do anything about the water, but they thought we should try to do something about the road. And it's understandable. This is tough for people when your roadway's under 10 inches of water. But there was a lot of other people out there that were very thankful and grateful to the work being done by our guys, and they worked some long hours. So just want to publicly say thanks to our Public Works guys. They did a great job. It was kind of off the grid. This is work that obviously they didn't plan on doing, but they had to kind of drop everything and go do it. So so it turned out pretty well, considering, and we just hope we don't get any more rain, even though it looks like we're gonna here this week, so.
Yeah, considering the conditions, I thought they did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do, I don't know what the legal end of it is, to
Recognize them?
recognize them, have lunch brought in for them?
We
and
could
just
try to figure something out.
Something just to say thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and we've talked about that already. I talked about that with Gary, and so we're gonna figure something out, and we'll let you know when this is. We can't have all 5 of you there, obviously, but if there's a few that wanna come and say a few things, that would be much appreciated, I'm sure, by them, because they've been pretty busy, so.
can I just ask, should we address the Steve Hosmer? Should we put that on a work session?
Yeah, we can bring that back at the July meeting, try to do a little bit of work,
Yeah.
starting then, but there's some other things that we could, just for your information, council, Mr. Hosmer did contact us and wanted to meet with us, last week, which we did. David Abel and myself met with him on, I believe it was Thursday last week, for about half hour, 45 minutes, and so we heard, much of what Mr. Hosmer was hoping to say tonight, and I told him, I said, it's gonna be tough to get all this in 3 minutes, so, and it was true. But we've got an understanding of what it is that he's after. So, you know, hopefully we can get a work on this, since you've kind of told us to take a look at it, so. Don't know if we'll come up with the exact answer he wants, but, we'll certainly come up with at least something.
We have the wellhead protection plan.
Is that something you want to touch on real quick, Paul?
Sure, I can touch on that. But the Minnesota Department of Health has completed the Wellhead Protection Plan Part 1 for the city of Minnetrista. Part 2 will follow. But we are required, once that Wellhead Protection Plan is approved by the Department of Health, to have a public meeting and send notice out to the other agencies in which a portion of our well field may maybe extend beyond our boundaries. So we have sent those letters out, and the public meeting is set for Thursday, June 26th, 2014, from 4 to 5 p.m.
And is that something that council attends or not?
You can, if more than 2 of you want to attend, obviously you would have to publish it as a council meeting.
Is anybody planning on going? I'm out of town, so I won't be there.
Can't make it.
What days?
June 26th.
June 26th.
We've got company in, so we'll be there.
Okay.
It's not real exciting, so you're not gonna miss a lot, so. But it's
Okay.
important, but not exciting.
We get involved with that.
And then, last item is just to remind the council 2 things, and I'm gonna mention one more item. We do not have a meeting. The first meeting in July has generally been canceled, and it will be again that way this year, so no meeting on July 7th. But we will meet next on July 21. And just a quick update on our staffing. You met Mr. Olson tonight, who's joined us a couple weeks ago. We will have, hopefully on July 21st, when we reconvene, chance to introduce 2 other new employees that have replaced people that have left. We'll have Michael Woken, who'll be our new CSO. He'll replace Mr. Gale, who happens to be here tonight. And Randy Storms, who is going to begin on July 7th. So Michael Woken will begin on June 30, and then Randy Storms will begin on July 7th. So,
Okay.
so hopefully you'll get to meet those 2 gentlemen on July 21st.
Before we go, there's something I did want to bring up. Unfortunately, in this time of craziness with the water, we had a lot of good things happen. Unfortunately, it's come to my attention that we've had some bad things, and it has to do with verbal abuse. And I think there's been a lot of it with our people in the field, and I think also our people at the front desk. And I would like to see us look into something is to have a policy addressing that. I know a lot of private companies do. I did. This is things that just, it can't happen, I'm sorry. I mean, you just can't verbally abuse somebody like this. I mean, with 4-letter words, and it doesn't do anybody any good. So I don't know what the council's thought on looking into something like that, getting some type of a policy in place. It can be very simple, it can be very, extravagant. I mean, just something that our people don't deserve this. Nobody deserves this kind of stuff, And I know when you're in an emergency situation, emotions are high, but people need to understand our people are doing the best they can, So I don't know.
No, I agree.
What's your thoughts on looking at some type of verbal abuse policy?
Directed towards staff
Yeah.
from the public is what you're talking
Residents
about?
are upset about an issue.
ABC,
and maybe-
ABC.
Right, because I think it got a little out of hand. I
Mhm.
spoke to Gary Peters a little bit about it, and I just said, I don't care who you are, you don't deserve that,
Right.
So.
Well, on behalf of staff, we do appreciate your sentiments, Mr. Vanderlinde and council. I'm sure you share them, so we can certainly look at something and try to bring something back. Our staff is, unfortunately these days, just what we do, we generally don't get people call you up and say, hey, you're doing a great job. Sometimes you do, but generally people call because they have an issue. And so I know you're kind of talking about the extremes, but they're pretty savvy. They kind of know when to say, if you're going to continue berating me, we're going to just end this conversation and hang up politely. So, because what you do get is, hey, they hung up on me. Well, what you don't hear is that they were getting sworn at. So, so yeah, we could certainly bring something back, but it's good to know that you guys are thinking this way about that. So it's appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, staff or?
No, we don't have
council?
anything else. Anybody else got anything?
I'll entertain my favorite motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Is there?
Huh?